Hello, good morning, and I am Dr. Ferrara here to talk to you about personality disorders. This particular video is on histrionic personality disorders, and this is a situation that if you're in it and you have someone close to you who has it, you will know it. Okay, increased emotional intensity, perhaps outbursts, very attention seeking, and it begins in early adulthood. But if you have someone with this disorder in your environment, you will know it. The histrionic personality has to be the center of attention. So it does begin in early adulthood, but the incident rate it's kind of low, 1.84%, almost 2% of the population. But it differs depending on the other, what we call comorbid things that might interact, like illnesses or sicknesses or traumas. It also differs depending on cultural norms. So different cultures are more demonstrative than others, as we all know. Some are more conservative and very austere when they talk, and others are very, oh my God, I told you, how come you didn't listen to me? And I want you to listen to me. Hurry up. What's wrong with you? And so those are the kind of reactions you get all the time. And if you're on the receiving end of that kind of conversation, it's very exhausting, very exhausting. So when you're doing an interview for diagnostic purposes, you really need to rule out whether there's other extenuating circumstances that could have led to the same hysteria. Certainly after trauma, certainly after a car accident, after you've been physically threatened or injured, you're going to have intense emotions. But for others, it happens every day, every day. So it's not going to stop. It's not going to slow down. It's their way of interacting. And yes, there is an increased propensity of it found among females. So yes, they're more likely to have hysteria kinds of outbursts. It heightens after trauma, like a divorce, a bad divorce, or a loss of a loved one. But what happens, your reactions are out of proportion with the situation. And you also would be prone to having impulsivity issues, similar to that found in antisocial behavior, but the hysteria part of it is heightened. The antisocial individual would probably react in a very cool manner so that they can keep control over whoever they're interacting with. But and sometimes the person who has hysteria will heighten almost like a manic reaction to everything else. All expressions are exaggerated and everything is out of proportion to what the context is. So that's the difference. Like there's many people that have a demonstrative way of talking and they're like, I told you this, instead of saying, I told you that was going to happen. But very often that's not the case. That doesn't guarantee that they're histrionic. Some people are just more demonstrative in the way they express themselves. But in emphasis is mostly in this case centered on the individual who has hysteria personality disorder. And if it's significant enough, even life functions are impaired. So for instance, if they went for an interview and they didn't get the job, they will overreact to that rejection. Oh, I hated that person anyway. Who did they think they were talking to me like that? Why did they ask me that question? So it's all aggravated, aggressive, assertive statements made towards others without taking any of the insight into self and saying, gee, how could I have done better on that interview? So as with all disorders, you want to rule out other issues such as substance abuse, pre-existing mental health that may happen, or as I said, life traumas, if that happens. So what are the actual criteria that individuals with histrionic personality disorder have? The classic one is, and you know this from seeing it, that they are very unhappy if they are not the center of attention, no matter what's done. If there's 6 people there, they still want to hog up the conversation, or they still want to overreact to a joke or something to the point where everybody's looking at them and they'll say, and then of course, everybody looks at them when they overreact and they like that. So that makes them feel more important. And of course, what can really get them in trouble is there are times they can be sexually provocative, means that the person is using their sexuality again to get more attention. And it's inappropriate. It could be in the workplace. It could be at a business party. It could be at your Christmas party. You certainly don't want to be falling all over people, but I do have many examples where individuals overreact at a Christmas party, make sexual innotations, which is definitely not cool. That's a no-no, but that's what will happen if they want more attention. And the same thing happens. The third criteria is that emotionally, you see rapid shifts in their emotions. They may make small talk, but it's all shallow. So it's like, oh, I love your tie. What's it? Oh, that's nice. What's it made of? Oh, wonderful. I love silk. Yep. Good. Okay. And that's about the extent of the information that they can come up with to interact with others. Now, in other cases, they can be very physically aggressive. And again, this is to draw attention to themselves. And like, just take a simple thing, like if the eggs weren't cooked right when you're out in a restaurant ordering, instead of what most people might merely say, excuse me, but these eggs are not what I ordered. Can you get me something else? Instead, they'll make a big scene about it. It's like, Jesus, these eggs are disgusting. What happened to you? Don't you know how to make eggs in this restaurant? Take this back. I'm not paying for that. I'm not paying for that. So they'll make a big deal out of it. Okay. So it's overreaction to this situation. Now, the fifth area is the style of speech. Sometimes they go on and run off manically and excessively. What do you mean? What do you mean? What's wrong with my shoes? There's nothing wrong with my shoes. My shoes look good. Oh my, look at me. Don't I look great? And so they're very impaired with these superficial statements that aren't necessarily accurate. So it could be anything from as simple as oh, I saw that play. It was horrible. I got out of there in 15 minutes. So, well, they didn't really see the play because you weren't there. And then the other thing that you'll notice the most about a person who is of histrionic nature is that they make theatrical expressions of emotion. Like, oh, you're kidding. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. And so it's over dramatizing the reactions again to get attention. But ironically, what many people may not realize, and another criteria, number 7, is that they're easily influenced by others. Shallow thoughts, everything's superficial, and everything is saying things to get that attention. Very craving attention. So very often they perceive, number 8, they perceive that relationships are more important than they are like intimate versus love. So for instance, if you just did something nice for them, they may jump to the conclusion that you love them. And that's why, instead of realizing you were just being mannerly and you treat other people the same way, in their eyes, they're more important. So therefore, that act meant more for them that you love them. Boy, are you in trouble now. Now you got someone going to cling to you because they're looking for more of that attention. You did it. So yes, it starts in early childhood. It does. And lively dramatics are constantly going on, but they do have initial charm and they could be very demanding. So they're charming. They'll give you some little throw out a seed so that in fact you come back and give them 10 compliments. You see, they'll do fishy statements like, oh, well, I bought these shoes. What do you think? What do you think? Of course, they're fishing for a compliment. So they may flirt when it's inappropriate. And those are things that demand attention again from others. And they have to be, when you're out with your group, they have to be the life of the party. So that is not very trying. Other people get exhausted just listening to them. And other people also get tired of tolerating it. Very often they'll have a sidekick. They'll have a friend who's a little more passive, a little more willing to stand in the shadows in order to make themselves look like the limelight. But if they pair it up with another person who also wants to be in the limelight, that's not going to go. No. So then there will be conflict. There will be interactions between them. And so you need to sort out immediately for yourself, what kind of person is this that I'm dealing with? If they can be very seductive in order to get your attention, they will be very seductive. And it's touchy-feely, and it's like, oh, how are you? And maybe, again, where it's not appropriate, when in fact they're in business environments or just meeting somebody for the first time. So these are things that you need to be aware of, the person who has histrionic personality disorder. They will give you empty compliments. They don't really mean it, but it's just a way of making themselves more ingratiated into your thoughts so that you will reciprocate and give them compliments. They can be very vague and indifferent. If you ask them things, it's not a very deep conversation. very often they'll be overly affectionate where they may jump in and run and hug tight somebody they just met for the first time. Or they'll say, oh, I heard so much about you. I couldn't wait to meet you. Meanwhile, they never heard anything about you. So, it's just a matter of, again, setting themselves up to get more attention and more compliment. Hugs to strangers where it's not appropriate. Or if they're upset, the converse is true. They can be overly upset and cry, have a tantrum in public, and they can run off kicking if they're really upset with you. Doesn't matter if you're in a public place, it's going to happen. So histrionic personality is very difficult to live with. And for those who have significant others that may have this dramatic kind of a personality, it's almost like you're not going to win. It's not going to change. So unless, again, that person attends therapy and develops boundaries for how to act with other people, it's not going to happen. But do you think a histrionic person is willing to listen to a therapy? Do they want to go to a therapist and admit that something's wrong with them when in fact they're trying to gain more compliments from them? So there's a lot of game playing that would happen where they're trying to make themselves look better. But in fact, this histrionic behavior is very easily identified by a lot of people. Some people have more tolerance than others. So they will pick friends that'll tolerate this. There's always someone who's more willing to give, and a histrionic person is more willing to take at all times as far as compliments go and admiration. Boundary setting is so important. Otherwise, the person just appears very needy. And that neediness can get them into trouble. As you know, there are people who are more than willing to take advantage of anybody who's not really thinking so straight. So they may mistake a stranger's attention for being positive, but that's not the case. So that is the problem. Okay, so if you do have a family member who has histrionic disorders, and I don't mean the typical teenage girl who's stamping her feet or having a tantrum. We know teenage girls can always be moody, so don't overshoot this and start diagnosing. But this is for somebody who is supposed to act like an adult in young adulthood and carry on responsibilities. And that overly histrionic behavior, of course, as with all disorders, becomes heightened if drugs are involved. So that exaggerates the moods that this person may or may not develop. So be careful. Treatment is possible. If you have concerns, there are references below, but just check in our description area. I left you links for places for therapy and also for you to be able to get some help for yourself as the caretaker and how to interact appropriately. So you don't want to antagonize a person with histrionic disorder because that's just going to lead to more uprising, and two wrongs don't make a right. So you want to try to calm the person down who's histrionic and placate in whatever way you need to, just to get them calmed down in order to have a fairly decent, as much as possible conversation. All right. With that in mind, please, if you need assistance, I leave you references below. Please check in the description. And also, if you enjoyed this talk, please give me a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. This is Dr. Ferrara saying, God bless. May you always walk in love.